From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Thanks, Catherine Drew. Thank you very much. Welcome to Tuesday's Richie Allen Show, July 31st, 2018.
Asking the questions mainstream journalists will never ask. This is your Richie Allen Show on richieallen.co.uk, Fab Radio 2 in Manchester, and triggerwarning.tv.
Some of my listeners have too much time on their hands. I'm talking to you, John Nichols. Welcome to the show.
It's the Richie Allen Show, broadcasting live on richieallen.co.uk and multiple platforms around the world. And now, here's your host, Richie Allen.
Oh, I tried to get a member of a UK Jewish community to come on this program tonight to talk about their feelings around claims that anti-Semitism is not only rife in the Labour Party, but it's endemic in UK society. But I failed again. I tried hard to put somebody up against Gilad Atzmon, who will join me, the jazz saxophonist and author of books like The Wandering Who and Being in Time. Yeah, I think I said that right. I read it twice, I should know. So Gilad joins me in around about 30 minutes time. We'll talk about that and more with him. It is Tuesday's show. Tweet me on the usual Twitter handle. It's at Richie Allen Show. July 31st, live on Fab Radio 2 in Manchester, triggerwarning.tv, TuneIn Radio and richieallen.co.uk. Let me tell you that at the conclusion of this programme, at 9 p.m. UK time tonight, going live on triggerwarning.tv and going live on the Cogent Radio app, my friend Hayden Hewitt and Graham. Terrific show that follows this. So there's your evening's listening for you. Right there. Tuesday's show. Tuesday. Yeah. And it's been lovely and cool. So I can't complain. It's been lovely and cool. Right, so Gilad and all of that. So I'm not going to kick off with anti-Semitism. We'll talk a bit about that. And I've got some interesting audio for you, which I'll play before Gilad joins me, as I said, around about 30 minutes from now. Are you well? Are you in good form? Have your children home for the school holidays? Is it driving you mad? I shouldn't laugh. It could be me in 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years' time. Maybe it will, maybe it won't be. Listen, I wasn't going to kick off with this, but I'm going to kick off with it. I'm not annoyed. I'm not perturbed. I'm not disturbed. I'm not sad. But I contacted a couple of venues and in Manchester and said, look, I'm a broadcast journalist, an academic man, a qualified man, which isn't saying much. And I said, I've devised a very interesting audiovisual presentation called Media Techniques in the latter part of the 20th century, early 21st century. It's an interesting and I think funny at times, but also very prescient look at how the media does what it does. I'm Richie Allen, I'm a journalist, and I want to do this 3-hour thing with an hour Q&A with the audience. Now, one theatre in the city came back to me, so they did, and they gave me a price, which wasn't too expensive, but not too cheap either, for a 400-seater venue. And I said, great, this is good. I like it. I like the date. I like the fact that it's afternoon. I like the fact that people, if they want to come, they might not want to come, will be able to get in and out of the city in the afternoon and not have to worry about transport. All was hunky-dory until the venue said, please send me your business details. So I sent them the business address for the Richie Allen Show, and they got back to me within a couple of minutes saying that, oh, it's just turned up that we forgot that there was another booking on that date. So we can't host you on that date. Sorry about that. Goodbye. And I thought, well, there was bound to be some of that, right? I mean, I'm nobody important. I'm not a researcher of any great note. I certainly am not. I'm not a great writer, none of that. But I've worked in commercial and national media for years, and I've got a lot to say about what has happened to the media. And it's new, and it's interesting, and it's going in directions maybe that other people haven't explored. I'm not important. I'm just an ex-academic guy now presenting radio programmes. But I can't have that theatre, maybe because of some of the things that I've said on the programme before. I'm working on other venues, and I'm hoping to do something in mid-November. These are tyrannical times. Don't feel sorry for me. I don't care. I will get a venue, and I will announce it, and there will be tickets, and it will be very cheap. It'll be very affordable. I'm talking really affordable, and it'll work out. But it's just a tiny little glimpse, if anybody cares, of the tyranny that we live in today. Oh, we can't have him because, well, transgender people maybe don't like him. Maybe Jewish people in the UK maybe don't like some of the things he said about Israel. Oh, it's him, is it? It's him. Is it the Richie Allen Show? Is it? Well, sorry, quick, make an excuse and cancel quick. And that's just the way it is in 21st century UK. But I couldn't give an arse. We'll work it out anyway. But I thought I'd share that with you. Somebody from another venue, a nice venue, has come back to me and has said, here's a price, Richie. Right. This is just before I came on here. Here's a price, Rich. What do you think? Let us know before the end of August. We can book it provisionally for you. I've said to the guy, book it provisionally. I'll wait to see now. Does he come back and say, oh, sorry, I forgot. We're all in Zimbabwe that week. So we can't host or accommodate you for your speech, your talk, your address, which I want to give. Anyway, well, all over the UK media today, that it's being alleged that the Manchester Arena bomber Salman Abedi was rescued by the Royal Navy from Libya's civil war 3 years before he allegedly blew himself up and killed 22 people at the Ariana Grande concert in the Manchester Arena. So, allegedly, he was picked up by the Navy and brought back here. A lot of questions about this. The BBC report today that Abedi was 19 years old in the summer of 2014 when Libya was descending into an increasingly chaotic civil war. Don't you like the way the BBC is always complicit? It's always at the head of the queue to airbrush history. A chaotic civil war? No, not at all. But we'll leave that for now. So they're saying that the Foreign Office closed its embassy and urged UK citizens to get out, and the Royal Navy sent HMS Enterprise, a survey ship, to the coast off of Tripoli. It evacuated British citizens, about 110, among them Salman Abedi, and his brother Hashem. They were visiting their parents, who had moved back to Libya, and that's what's being reported today. If you dry this one out, you could fertilise, well, all of England's valleys green. Listen to Polly Boyko from RT talking about this today.
Well, Salman Abedi, he's the Manchester attacker. That suicide bombing left 22 people dead, including 7 children. But it's now been revealed in the British media that 3 years before he perpetrated that deadly attack, the British government had rescued him from Libya as part of an operation to evacuate British citizens because of the civil war there. And Abedi and his brother were allegedly rescued on the Royal Navy ship, the HMS Enterprise, and they were taken from the Libyan coast over to Malta, from where they then got flights home back to the UK. Now, just to give you a bit of background on Abedi and his links to Libya. He was born in the UK to Libyan parents, so he was a British national, but his parents moved to Libya around the time of the uprising against Gaddafi in 2011. So his father had joined the uprising against the Gaddafi government, and he was thought to have been fighting with a group called the Libyan Islamic Fighting Group. So their two sons from 2011 to around about 2014, when this sort of evacuation took place, they sort of shuttled, back and forth between the UK and Libya. And they were definitely in Libya in August 2014.
That's very disturbing stuff from Polly Boyko at RT. I like Polly Boyko. I think she's a very good reporter. There's something very wrong with that report, and I hope you caught it. If you didn't catch it, listen again, not to the entire clip, but to about 15 seconds. Listen.
His parents moved to Libya around the time of the uprising against Gaddafi in 2011. So his father had joined the uprising against the Gaddafi government, and he was thought to have been fighting with a group called the Libyan Islamic Fighting Group.
Why did Polly Boyko say that Ramadan Abedi took his son and family to Libya in 2011, at which point he joined the LIFG? Basically, that's why they went to Libya, said Boyko. Why did she say that? She knows, or at least I believe she knows, that's nonsense. Why is RT ignoring or omitting the fact that Ramadan Abedi was a member of Libya's secret service under Gaddafi, and he was, but left the country with his mother in 1991. He ended up in London in 1992. Right? MI6 wanted Gaddafi dead. Ramadan Abedi, the father of Salman Abedi, approached MI6 and said that he would be a conduit between the LIFG and British intelligence. That's the Libyan Islamic Fighting Group, by the way, and British intelligence. So his father, this Manchester bomber, allegedly father, approached MI6 and said, you want Gaddafi dead, I hate him, I'm with the LIFG, I'll be a conduit. And MI6 forevermore referred to Ramadan Abedi as Agent Tunworth and gave him about 40 grand to buy weapons to assassinate Gaddafi in 1996. You see, Ramadan Abedi was an agent of MI6. Why doesn't RT report on that? Surely RT knows that, or at least I would have thought that. Anyway, here's David Shaler, former MI5 officer, in conversation with me soon after the bomb at Manchester Arena last year, and he explains pretty well who Tunworth and who Ramadan Abedi are the same person and what they were doing.
This is exclusive, Richie, at the moment, but it transpired when Salman Abedi, when this all came up, it turned out that his father, Ramadan Abedi, was arrested in Libya, and he's a member of what's known as the Islamic Fighting Group. Now, this man is also the agent Tunworth, who was essentially the Al Qaeda in Libya member, or the Islamic Fighting Front member, who approached MI6 to get the money to fund the operation. Obviously, he didn't actually take part in the operation, because otherwise he probably would have been killed. But clearly, this is the go-between. Now, this operation in Manchester, the bomb was said to be of a very sophisticated design. So we have an MI6 agent is the father of the suicide bomber, according to their story, basically. So the expertise he would have learnt from MI6, according to their logic, would have been used in that attack. So MI6 is implicated in this very clearly. I'm not saying they ordered the attack or anything like that. I'm saying the expertise they have given is help that attack go ahead, if we believe what they're saying, basically.
And neither BBC 24, BBC News, Channel 4 or Sky News have gone near that one, despite the fact that it is now widely believed to be true. Because after David Shaler came on this programme and explained it, it later appeared in the Telegraph newspaper. No credit was given to this programme. Of course they don't do that. And little credit was given to David Shaler. Not every detail was reported in the Telegraph, but the basic facts. So why is RT putting stories out, omitting those facts? What are the implications of what Shayla revealed last year about Ramadan Abedi? Well, the implications are shocking. The implications are that there is no way, there is no human way, there is no possible way that MI6 and MI5 and the Metropolitan Police couldn't have known about Salman Abedi, this guy's son, particularly as the French and Turkish intelligence agencies were telling the UK authorities that this guy had travelled even in Syria and that he might be dangerous. But absolutely no follow-up from the UK media. Incredible to think they're talking today about him being picked up by the Royal Navy. Stinks to high heaven, this. You wonder why they're even broadcasting that story. 18 and a half minutes past the hour. Tuesday's show. This is the Richie Allen Show. Tweet to me directly. It's at Richie Allen Show on Twitter. Loads of scaremongering going on. It was relentless when I was off last week. The UK relentless media, relentless in terms of telling horror stories about what will become of us all if the UK leaves the EU with no deal. We had Sky News today warning that you might have traffic chaos on Kent's roads, you know, the roads to Dover. You might have lorries parked up and going on for miles. You heard the scare tactics over the weekend about the army having to distribute food on the streets of the UK. It is monumental bollocks. And it is impressing on people that we're all screwed in the event there is no deal. Brexit scaremongering. The BBC sunk to new depths this morning. Radio 5 Live. It's a news magazine radio show, Radio 5 Live Breakfast, presented by Nikki Campbell and Rachel Burden, but I think Burden is away at the moment. They had a reporter today in Benidorm, one of the biggest shitholes on planet Earth, Benidorm, and they were talking about the negative effect of Brexit in Benidorm. Now, this is genuine. I'm not making any of this up. I've not been selective with the clips I've taken. This is a real BBC News show talking about Brexit and the implications of it. You have to hear this to believe it.
What are the issues that might be affecting people's holidays or people coming from Benidorm to the UK?
Well,
the guy answering the question now is a reporter in Benidorm. You get the picture?
the first thing to think about is that there actually already has been a bit of a Brexit effect here in Benidorm, and that's to do with the currency. So after the vote to leave the EU in summer 2016, the pound started buying you fewer euros. It's gone back up a bit, but still not where it was before the referendum. And that's having a knock-on effect to lots of businesses here. So people booking slightly shorter stays, spending a bit less, economising, and maybe booking fewer add-ons like excursions. And that came home to me when I was speaking to a Coldplay sound-alike, one of the many tribute bands here. Here's Bob, who's the lead singer in the Coldplay tribute band.
You what now? Bob from a Coldplay tribute band in Benidorm to give his opinion on what's happening with Brexit. You've got to be shitting me.
Tribute band.
I think this year we really are feeling that we have noticed. For example, 3-4 years ago, you see the street and it's full. In my opinion, it's a bad thing if the pound is going to be down. We need a very strong money in the UK so we can have a quality of clients and tourists coming here always.
It's uncanny, isn't it, just how much Bob sounds like Chris Martin. If you closed your eyes, you'd swear it was Chris Martin from Coldplay. Creepy, cringeworthy stuff that gets worse because the BBC Radio 5 reporter, remember, wasn't finished soliciting the Brexit opinions of the Costa Blancas tribute bands. No, there was more to come.
Yeah, so, I mean, you talk to people in the tourist industry here, and they've kind of seen it all. People who've been doing this for years and years and years, whether it's the invention of cheap flights changing everything, whether it was the ash clouds delaying everyone's flights, whether it was the Eurozone crisis making everything seem a bit tense here. They've kind of seen it all, and they're confident they will weather Brexit. Here is one of those tribute bands. This is Emma from the Little Mix Experience.
Emma from the Little Mix Experience, tribute band in Benidorm. Educate us all on what Brexit means for the UK.
It's going to take years for it to come in. Anyway, you're looking at 2020 before it all kicks in more or less. And I think a lot of people out here, they make a bigger deal of it than it actually is. I don't think it's going to be a major problem, especially to come to Spain or places like that. This is a major holiday destination. I don't think they're actually going to cut off totally and make it difficult for people to go on holiday from England.
The media. Bob from Coldplay. Emma from Little Mix giving you the lowdown on what Brexit means for UK citizens in Spain. You see, the BBC is a disgrace that isn't fit for purpose. If you ever needed a reason not to pay them their licence fee, you've got it right there. Laughing in our faces. An eminently qualified man. Let's just say myself. Experienced broadcaster, produced and presented at every level, couldn't get on to a BBC programme to argue with a presenter, though God knows I have tried. But Spanish Bob from Coldplay Benidorm and some woman in the Little Mix equivalent, no problem. There's your tax, pounds and pence and shillings being spent right there by the BBC. Remarkable stuff that. Had to scrub my ears and listen back to it again, thinking as I was in the car when I heard this in the very early AM, this has got to be a joke. But it wasn't. The French are banning smartphones and tablets from all French schools ahead of the new school year. This was voted through Parliament yesterday. The ban will apply to all pupils up to the age of 15. It's a campaign promise fulfillment by the President Emmanuel Macron. But the opposition parties have called it a publicity stunt. It means that phones must be left at home. You can't bring them to school, even in your school bag or in your coat. You've got to leave them at home and you can't have them effectively. Schools might make some exceptions in France for pedagogical use, extracurricular activities or for disabled pupils. A previous law passed in 2010 already prohibited smartphones in the classroom. The Education Minister, Jean-Michel Blanquet, said the earlier law didn't apply across the board and lacked teeth, while the new law moved France into the 21st century. Apparently, nearly 9 in 10 French teenagers between 12 and 17 have a smartphone. 25 minutes past the hour. Let's move on swiftly to talk a little bit about anti-Semitism in the Labour Party before I introduce Gilad Atzmon, who will be standing by patiently as well. Do tweet at Richie Allen Show to find out what other people are tweeting to me. Just where it says search Twitter, put Richie Allen Show, all one word, press enter, and you'll see what people are telling me this Tuesday evening. So you will. So Jeremy Corbyn then, well, it's anti-Semitism. It's been nothing but anti-Semitism for weeks. And it's been reported today that he's under a lot of pressure to expel one of his closest allies from the party after his ally, Peter Wilsman, a member of Labour's National Executive Committee, was recorded claiming Jewish Trump fanatics are behind these recent claims of anti-Semitism. It's an audio recording which was obtained by the Jewish Chronicle, and it has seen calls for Wilsman to be summarily expelled from Labour. What did he say on the tape? I'm sure if you're in the UK, you've heard it already. If you're not in the UK, you probably haven't. This is Peter Wilsman, senior Labour man, National Executive Committee member. Here he is asking questions about the evidence to show, or asking questions, or in fact asking to see evidence to support that anti-Semitism is basically endemic in Labour. Here he is on the recording.
They can falsify social media very easily. And some of these people in the Jewish community support Trump. They're Trump fanatics and all the rest of it. So I am not going to be lectured to by Trump fanatics making up daft information without any evidence at all. So I think we should ask the 70 rabbis, where is your evidence of severe and widespread anti-Semitism in this party?
Where is your evidence of severe and widespread anti-Semitism in the party? He sounded a bit ranty, but then those who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones, and my house is pretty much made of glass. I like the odd rant myself. Excuse me. So blanket coverage of this today. Gilad Atzmon joins me shortly. Couldn't get any comment from a Jewish journalist or private citizen. I put it out there, emailed several journalists and rabbis. No joy. Luciana Berger, MP, Jewish woman, is demanding suspension for Peter Wilsman, as is Liverpool MP Louise Ellman. Here is Liverpool MP Louise Ellman speaking with Sky News earlier today.
Peter Wilsman should be suspended immediately before the Labour Party sinks further into this abyss. Now that we've heard the recording of exactly what Peter Wilsman said, we can see that this was a rant. It was a rant blaming rabbis and the Jewish community for falsifying social media. This is real conspiracy theory, and it's an outrage, and he should be suspended immediately.
The audio recording, he says he questions the evidence of anti-Semitism. Can you answer that question?
Yes, he questions the evidence of anti-Semitism very loudly, maybe a tad aggressively. Where is this evidence from the rabbis that shows that anti-Semitism is widespread in the Labour Party? So what does Louise Ellman say to the journalist question, what about the evidence?
Well, the evidence is there for everybody to see.
Where is it? I can't see it. Obviously, Peter Wilsman can't see it. If you show it to me, I swear I will say, I've seen the evidence now. Where is it, Louise?
There are numerous cases, more than 100 cases of anti-Semitism piled up in Labour Party offices and not dealt with at all. And
yeah, there are hundreds of cases, or excuse me, she said 100 cases piled up in the Labour Party offices, not going anywhere. That isn't evidence. That's indicative of complaints made. Allegations do not equate to evidence, I would suggest. Allegations are not solid evidence. Wilsman was only asking a question, wasn't he? Don't know anything about this Wilsman guy. He was asking a question. Where's the evidence? Right? Does she have anything else to say, Louise Ellman?
Jeremy Corbyn himself has admitted that there is a problem of anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. So just what is Peter Wilsman talking about? At this very moment, his name is on the ballot paper circulated to Labour Party members where he's seeking re-election to the Labour Party's National Executive Committee, its ruling body. This man is unfit. He must be suspended.
He must be suspended. He must be ruled unfit to stand for the National Executive again. Blah, blah, blah. And we heard that throughout the day. It was unchallenged by a succession of the UK's most well-known news presenters on Sky and the BBC. It went unchallenged. No presenter had the cojones or the ovaries to say, stop. Where's the hard evidence that in the rank and file of the Labour Party there are all these Jew haters? Please show us the hard evidence. If you do, well, we'll put it out there as any self-respecting news organisation should do. If it's there, we will broadcast it. Where's the evidence? But no, we didn't get any of that today, sadly. Great bit of irony this morning, though, dearest listener. Great bit of irony. Andy Walton is a journalist. Allegedly, he was on the breakfast show on Sky News today as a paper reviewer, looking at the morning's papers. And, well, Andy Walton is aghast at the fact that this is going on. He's aghast. Listen to him and I'll explain then why it's ironic in a minute. Andy Walton.
Can you believe it's 2018 and we're having this conversation?
Can you believe it?
That the editor of the Jewish Chronicle has to write in a major newspaper and say that Jewish people... What he says here is, make no mistake, fear is now widespread among British Jews. I mean, can you believe this is the year and we're having this conversation? Look, I am a Labour member. I really want a radical socialist government that transforms the country. And if we had one of those ready to take government, I'd be excited. But
he'd be excited. If we had a radical socialist government, he would be excited. Let me just educate Andy Walton on something that is irrefutable. if you had a radical socialist government in this country, they would be the first people to tell Israel and its lobbyists in this country to fuck the fuck off. That's what a radical socialist person or persons would do. But with the death of Tony Benn, probably, there's no radical socialists in this country. They don't exist. Social Democrats, as a friend of mine refers to them. That's what they are. Centre leftists, Europhiles. A radical socialist would have nothing to do with the murderous, barbarous apartheid state of Israel. Right? I would have said. Anything else from Andy there? Can you believe it?
But what we've got is we've got a party here not dealing with the basic issue of racism among a minority, but I'm afraid to say a significant minority of its members. It is a huge problem, and Labour has got to get a grip of this right now.
This has been going on for ages.
Exactly. I cannot understand why they haven't got a grip on it. And let's just clear up, this is not to do with Israel and Palestine. I was in Israel and Palestine a couple of weeks ago. There are major problems there. We are allowed to criticise the Israeli government. There is no problem with that, and we should criticise the Israeli government when it abuses the human rights of Palestinians. But there is no grounds for anti-Semitism, and some of the stuff we're seeing on Twitter is absolutely horrific.
It's horrific. And we are allowed to criticise the Israeli government, he said. And of course, that's a nonsense as well. I talked about this last night. You hear this all the time from social democrats, left social democrats, Europhiles, centre leftists. Of course, I criticise Israel all the time, myself. But Israel has a right to exist. It has a right to defend itself. But I criticise it all the time. We heard from somebody last night who said, but I criticise it. I criticise them taking potshots at the Palestinians. We could be criticising them until the cows come home, but they're still going to do it. If I was behaving badly at home domestically and the future Mrs. Allen was to criticise me and criticise me and criticise me, I might just keep on doing it. But if the future Mrs. Allen grew sharp teeth and left or kicked me out, well, I just might change my ways. Criticise. Anyway, so this was Andy Walton, the journalist. Well, demanding that this is terrible, it's horrific that people are saying this. Demanding evidence of the rabbis. Horrific. Why is it ironic, what he said? Why is what he said ironic? Do you want to hear why? Well, you won't believe it. But 3 minutes later, I swear, 3 minutes later, he read a story in the papers about George Orwell from another newspaper. And this is what he had to say.
He famously, George Orwell, wrote an essay about the perfect cup of tea. He wrote about serious matters and less serious matters.
Light and shade.
Yeah, exactly. He's one of my favourite writers. I think that the stuff that he wrote is so prescient today. If you look at 1984, the sales have gone through the roof, thanks to Trump and the other kind of populists gaining power. If you look at Animal Farm, with some of the talk about communism in recent days. Anyway...
Prescient stuff, said Andy Walton. 1984 and Animal Farm. Relevant today, said Andy Walton. The man who finds it horrific that Peter Wilsman has asked 70 rabbis for some evidence to prove their claims that anti-Semitism is rampant in the Labour Party. This is your Richie Allen Show, live right now on Fab Radio 2, TuneIn Radio, triggerwarning.tv, and, of course, richieallen.co.uk. Here's a quick break. Gilad Atzmon is standing by and will join me on the other side of these.
Introducing the H2O app, a powerful water structuring application that programs vibrational energies into water through the use of different sound frequencies. Once programmed, the use of water for drinking, cooking, bathing. Give it to your friends and colleagues or spread it around the garden. The list goes on. It's not just water that the app can be used for either. It's great for programming crystals too. The H2O app is free to download and is available on both Android and Apple platforms. For further information, go to h2oapp.online.
There's a place high in the mountains of Spain, a sanctuary where souls gather from all around the globe to learn about themselves and experience powerful changes in the way we see our world. They become awakened to their gifts and their power to heal others. Become part of this ever-growing worldwide family of of unique, pure energy healing practitioners. Discover how amazing you truly are. Go to www.markbayerski.com. It could just change your life forever. Forever.
Have you lost access to important data from a computer hard drive, mobile phone, or other storage device? Maybe you have a broken hard drive containing years of information, or a smartphone that no longer works from which you'd like the pictures, movies, and chats recovered. If you would like to recover data from any type of digital device, including desktop and laptop computers, external hard drives, cameras, smartphones, NAS, and RAID servers, then contact Data Clinic today at dataclinic.co.uk now.
Welcome back to the most listened to independent radio show in Europe. It's your Richie Allen Show.
Where it is fast approaching 19 minutes to the top of the hour, live on Fab Radio 2 in Manchester, TuneIn Radio, of course, triggerwarning.tv. I mentioned this, and richieallen.co.uk. So blanket coverage for this story today, but also regularly over the last few weeks. My guest this evening needs little introduction to you. He's been on with me many times. I'm sure you knew all about him before you knew anything about me. He's a brilliant musician who's a former recipient of the BBC Jazz Album of the Year. Top man. But he's also written two amazing books. Well, he's written several books. He's written articles on his website, which I'll give you the details of. It's gilad.co.uk. But the books Being in Time and The Wandering Who are must-reads for anybody starting out on the path of trying to get beyond the headlines of mainstream media, find out what's really going on with identity politics and what's happening in the Middle East. Let's welcome back to the show our friend Gilad Atzmon. Gilad, welcome back. How are you?
Hello, brother. I'm fine. I'm very happy to talk to you now. We had a bit of rain for 2-3 days. It feels better, less scary. It was quite frightening, I must admit, at a certain stage.
You sound like a gardener there. It's only gardeners welcoming the rain at this particular point.
I think that our garden is dried out. You know, it's kind of nostalgia now.
Yeah.
No, I came to this country specifically because I like the weather. People think that I have an issue with Israel. I just couldn't stand the heat there.
Couldn't stand the heat.
No.
So you got out of the kitchen. Right. Here's the point of view. It's one point of view.
Yeah.
It's a famous cliche. It's an old cliche. It's an old adage. A broken clock is right twice a day. I've had emails from people, sadly, all of whom wouldn't come on the programme today and won't come on any day, who say to me, they say, Richie, you do a semi-decent job of talking about the fake alternative right, talking about identity politics, how that is rallying the alt-right, and you talk about how they are blaming Muslims and all of that. But you fail to recognise, Richie, or you deliberately ignore how elements of the far left in recent years have begun to turn up the heat on Jews, whether it's Jews here or whether it's Jews in America. And we're seeing that, and guys like you and your guests ignore that. It is real, it is genuine, and it just doesn't get reported as much. What do you think?
I gave it a lot of thought today because I knew that I'm going to talk to you, and you're not the easiest interviewer around.
Why?
You can be challenging, which is good, which is why we love you. And I think that we do have a serious Jewish problem in this country, very serious Jewish problem, and it is, I believe, starting to become genuinely dangerous. But it is not because of anti-Semitism, and not because of the labor, and not because of Corbyn, and not because of the far left. It is because Jewish pressure groups that are largely Zionists and identify with Zion are mounting some enormous pressure on British establishment, whether it is the media or British political parties, or as we could see, even the cases like the police. We had a few cases of Crown Prosecution Service refusing to prosecute people, and they ended up changing their mind. And this is, I believe, extremely dangerous for British Jews. I know a lot of Jews in this country. I'm in the music business, and we have a lot of incredibly talented Jews who are involved in this business, and I'm working with them on a daily basis. And I can see how scared they are, and often they come to talk to me. They think that I'll be able to help them, when the time gets sour. But obviously, I'm not that important. But no, this was a joke, obviously.
Yeah, I'm listening. Yeah.
But the issue here is that they don't know how to deal with these issues because their identity has been hijacked by political bodies that claim to represent them. How many people read the Jewish Chronicle, which is the biggest paper probably, yeah? How many people read all the other Jewish papers that I don't even know how they're called? Who has voted the BOD to represent British Jewry and to mount pressure on a national party that is apparently the most popular party in this country, and some people say the biggest party in Europe? What do they think? That people that are witnessing their leader, Jeremy Corbyn, being treated as Adolf Hitler, our number one anti-racist in Britain, is treated by these lunatics as if he's Adolf Hitler? Do they think that it makes Jews loved? And I prepared myself to this interview, and kind of I could see what we will come up with, and I must mention that for many years, a lot of people within the anti-Zionist ranks are telling us Judaism is not Zionism and not all Jews are Zionist, and I don't have any problem with it. I never talk about people or about religions. I talk about ideologies. But I'm afraid that with the chief rabbi of Britain, together with 68 rabbis, mounting pressure on the Labour Party on behalf of Israel, because the Labour Party endorsed the international working definition of anti-Semitism, but it dropped the four kind of semi-chapters or examples
that
refer to Israel. The clauses, it's examples really that refer to Israel, because the Labour Party believes that Israel should be under criticism. Then we see the three apparently Jewish leading papers in this country making kind of come out, print the same headlines, and they basically regard Corbyn as existential threat to Jewish life in the UK. They basically turn Jeremy Corbyn into a Hitler character. And I decided to look into it and to understand what is really happening here. And it is not that complicated. And I think that your audience, your listeners, should know, should understand what Zionism was all about, at least in its very
just before we get into that. So you look at these 68, 69, 70 rabbis and all of this.
Yeah.
And look, I go along with pretty much everything you've said. But then I want to take it back before we get into Zionism. I want to take it back to the sorts of things that people are saying they're experiencing. Now, like yourself, I happen to know lots of Jewish people, not only here in Manchester, but also in Ireland as well. Now, most Jewish people that I've dealt with over the years will say that they have had the occasional smart or nasty remark made to them by people. They've heard the occasional anti-Semitic trope or whatever, but they've not bothered. They've not been bothered by it. But I also get people saying to me that stories of people being abused and threatened when they're coming from the synagogue are genuine. Cemeteries being vandalised are genuine, and we've had a lot of that in North Manchester. And people say, what do you say, Richie, about the abuse that some Jewish public citizens, so not necessarily MPs, but Jews who might be on councils or they might be business people, the sort of crap that they have to read, or that maybe not that they have to read, but it's put out there anyway. You know, you're a Zionist, you're a murderer, you're this, you're that, you're the other. They say that this is evidence that while people like you, Gilad Atzmon, and the presenter of this program and others are pretty clear in your definition of Zionism and what's going on in Israel, the vast majority of people maybe are not. And on the ground, in daily life, Jews are experiencing the sort of nonsense that people are saying is a figment of their imagination. Before we get into Zionism, what I'm saying is this is why I said... Okay. Go ahead. This is why I said a broken clock is right twice a day. Go ahead.
I assume that anti-Jewish bigotry exists. I also believe that we may as well seen in the past violent incident, though they are very, very little. Even those bodies that I really don't trust their statistics, all those Jewish bodies that gather statistics, and I looked into it. I don't trust these statistics. Even people within the Jewish community criticize their statistics and so on and so on. Even they admit that the violent incidents are actually going down. But violent incidents are always a very serious thing, and they should be treated and in the most harsh manner. And this is why we have police in this country. And this is why we need a universal definition of anti-Semitism, which is very simple. All symptoms of hatred or bigotry or discrimination against X for being X are wrong. And X can be a Jew and can be black and can be Muslim and can be gay and whatever. This is why we need a universal attitude to anti-Semitism. Now, as you probably know, to anti-Semitism as part of opposition to racism. Now, talking of racially...
I'll tell you what we're going to do. Gilad, sorry to interrupt you. Hang on a second. The line is terrible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call you back on your mobile because it keeps breaking up. We're going to try the mobile. This is too important. And in the meantime, because I've only got a mobile number for you, if there is a landline number, which I'm not sure there is, but if there is, text it to me.
Call me on my mobile. Let me just start it. And okay.
Yeah, I'm going to call you. I'm going to call him on the mobile because it's breaking up. This is too important, this. And I don't want to mess around. So I'm actually going to call him while I'm chatting with you. The jazz saxophonist and author Gilad Atzmon is on the line, or was on the line to me from his home. We're talking about these allegations about anti-Semitism in the UK Labour Party, but not just in the UK Labour Party, but allegations that anti-Semitism is widespread in society. Now, in the absence of a member of the Jewish community, if the Jewish community exists, if the Irish community exists, you know how I feel about identity politics. But in the absence of anybody Jewish on the programme, in the absence of any Jewish journalists, they were invited on, I'm putting these points of view to Gilad. Some of these points of view I do have sympathy with. Like I said, a broken clock is right twice a day. So I'm going to give him a call there. Keep the tweets coming in, by the way. It's at Richie Allen Show on Twitter. At Richie Allen Show on Twitter. If you've got a point of view on this. And if you are listening to the programme, if you are Jewish, if you disagree with Gilad Atzmon, send me a tweet or drop me an email to richie@richieallen.co.uk. And if you do that, and I get it, I'll get you on the programme so you can make those points yourself. Right? Let's be grown up and adult about it. Let's give him a ring back on the mobile. I'm sure it'll be better than that Skype connection, which was absolutely dreadful there. Right, Tuesday's programme, 31st of July 2018. Are you back there, my friend? I think you might be.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be 1,000 times better. It was absolutely dreadful. It was dreadful.
I'm sorry about it.
No, it's not your fault.
I have a few... I have another... I should have tried to change. I have another internet line here. But anyway, can you hear me now?
Loud and clear. Loud and clear.
Okay, so can I continue just the point where I left it?
You can. As far as the last I heard, and it's important, you said that we should have an international definition for bigotry towards
racism.
Racism. Right, go ahead, yeah. Whether it's Jews,
exactly.
Whether it's... Yeah,
the
go ahead.
most important thing is to have an international definition of racism, because we all agree that racism and bigotry is a bad thing. And this definition is very simple. Racism is the hatred, the bigotry, the call for discrimination of X for being X. What it really means is that we hate people or discriminate them for what they are. So if we hate a black person for being black, it's wrong. If we hate a Jew for being a Jew, it's wrong. It's hard to believe, but it's wrong. All right? Now, what we see with the international definition of anti-Semitism is the complete opposite. It's actually confirmed. The Jews are people like no other people, because no other people have an international definition of the bigotry against them. There is no international working definition for anti-Muslim bigotry. There is no international definition for anti-black. And I spoke about it. I was in a festival. I was playing in a festival not far from you, kind of in the North Wales the other day. And I spoke, there was a black band just playing ahead of me, and I asked them, do you have an international definition for black? And they saw it. And those international definitions of things that are specific for Jews do not make Jewish people in this country more loved. It just confirms the fact or the idea that these people are exceptionalists. They see themselves as very, very special. And this is exactly why I wanted to talk about Zionism.
Right, just before you get into Zionism, let me jump in there. Because when I was dialing you back, I reiterated that I have invited the other side on the programme, and I couldn't get the other side on the programme. So I'm being the devil's advocate, but some of what I'm saying, I believe. Look, sadly, and I'm not trying to be a virtue signaler here, I am not. I don't think there are too many presenters as fairly viciously critical of the state of Israel as maybe this programme is, but I will concede this. Right across the so-called independent media, there are, and the independent media has never been as successful or as pervasive or as far-reaching as it is now. And right across it, there are people with very big audiences who peddle ideas that the Jew, and this is a historical thing, and you might want to argue with this, and I'm happy to shut up and let you argue, but historically, that the Jew is a wizened, miserly little money grubber sitting around plotting to keep all the money for themselves and keep everybody else down. And there are Jewish people listening to this programme now who will say, again, leave Gilad Atzmon to one side for a minute, leave Richie Allen to one side for a minute. They are probably sincere in what they're saying, but there has always been that undercurrent, this belief that the Jews are a hostile, parasitic little group of people determined. I'll give you, just before you come back in, I'll give you a laugh. I had a guy on the program a few weeks ago who's running for the Senate in California. Now, he's not going to win, but he was doing okay in the polling. And this guy believes that the Jews are afflicted with an evil gene. You see, this shit is out there. And just before you come back in, when you see Tommy Robinson supporters in London giving the Sig Heil stuff to the police and all that, why wouldn't a Jewish person in Ealing or in North London absolutely shit themselves when they see that? Over to you.
To start with, I do agree with you that such things can be tormenting for some Jews. And I guess that listening to Goldman Sachs CEO can be similarly tormenting to some Marxists.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure that what you are saying now is very tormenting for people who hold some racist views. But the whole idea of living in an open society, I assume that some of your listeners, the older ones, remember what it means. Living in an open society is the idea that I don't have to agree with you. I don't have to accept the fundamentals of your perception. And I can even strongly disagree with you, but I respect your freedom to say what you think as long as you don't incite violence. Now, when we look at the definition, the international definition of anti-Semitism, it is extremely problematic. Now, as I said for the third time, I want to go into Zionism, not because I'm going to attack Zionism. Quite the opposite. And I'm going to surprise you, because today on this program, you are doing the devil advocate. I'll be the devil advocate. You know, the idea of Zionism was born because quite a few Jewish intellectuals in the late 19th century, early 20th century, agreed totally with that guy you hosted a few weeks ago who is running for the Senate now. They agreed the Jews are too close to political power, to banking, to finance. They are never seen within the working people, the proletariat, and so on and so on. They are removed from labor. And the early Zionists said, and I'm talking about many of them, Herzl, Jabotinsky, Borochover, Katzenelson, Brenner, they said, it is not our fault. It is not because we are bad people. It is because we don't have a land of our own. We promise to make the Jews people like all other people. We promised to teach the Jews how to work on the soil, and they started the Jewish labor movement. And when they arrived at Palestine, they managed to get themselves some land in different. I'm talking before 48, and managed to expel already then quite a few Palestinians, and so on and so on. Zionism turned into a disaster, and you don't need me to talk about it today, but the whole idea was the promise to make Jews people like all other people. And here we are, in 2018, we have an international definition of anti-Semitism that proves the Jews are not people like all other people. We have this international definition of anti-Semitism that proves that Israel is not a state like all other states, because you cannot criticize it as you criticize all other states. We have rules of engagement. We have an international definition of anti-Semitism that actually confirms or admits the Jews are hated globally, which is something that Zionism promised to solve. So I came to a conclusion today that the international definition of working definition of anti-Semitism is in fact the most anti-Zionist text ever to see the daylight. And while understanding that, I understood that Jeremy Corbyn is the last standing Zionist. And why? Because Jeremy Corbyn, and I'm not a Labour member and I'm not a Corbyn close supporter. I have a lot of criticism of him to share with you and your audience, and I think that I've done it on your program before. Jeremy Corbyn, crime is that he sees the Jews as ordinary people. Jeremy Corbyn's crime is that he says, for the many, not the few. He sees us all as one people. And the people who push us, into this corner with their idiotic definition of anti-Semitism actually prove that they hold the complete opposite position. They actually believe in for the few and no one else. Jeremy Corbyn is the only Zionist in this country, and all those bodies that call themselves Jewish bodies and Zionist body and Zionist pressure groups are actually most removed from Zionism and understanding what Zionism is.
Well, here's a question for you. Where's the evidence that Jeremy Corbyn has any real understanding of the differences between Zionism, the genesis of Zionism, where it went? Where's the evidence that Corbyn knows the difference between Jewish folks living in Yorkshire and Zionists living in Tel Aviv? And where's the evidence that if he does understand that he's tried to explain that to his legions of followers over the years? Because that's a good question. I've never seen Jeremy Corbyn ever really delve down. Right?
Let me. As I said, I'm not a Jeremy
no, and I know you're
representative.
Not. I know you're not.
No, and I'm not a Labour member. And if I were a Labour member, they would probably
you'd be expelled. You'd be gone
20 times a week, by now. But
you'd be gone. Yeah.
but for sure. And I don't have any evidence of Jeremy Corbyn astute understanding of the complexity to do with Palestine and Zionism and Jewish. I think that Jeremy Corbyn is basically a very decent human being, a genuine anti-racist who wants to see all people equal, and I respect him doing it because I believe in the same thing. I'm not so sure that he's the most sophisticated person around, and I must admit that I wasn't very impressed with the way he handled this case so far. But there is another way to look at it. It may as well be that Jeremy Corbyn is actually slightly more sophisticated than we are willing to admit, and he takes here the role of Jesus Christ. And they punch him in the face, they slap his face, and he's giving the other cheek, and he's smiling to them and said, "I don't think that." They tell you that one of his MPs, which last week, Hodge, what was her name? Margaret Hodge.
Margaret Hodge, Dame Margaret Hodge,
Yeah. She called him, sorry for excuse my French, fucking anti-Semite according to the press.
Yeah.
And
she denies the expletive, but yeah, that was it. Yeah.
No, for sure. His answer was, "I'm so sorry that you think like that." It is cute. It is the Jesus Christ method to dismantle this tribal aggression. And I think that Jeremy Corbyn has learned all those years because he has been working with Palestinians and also with a lot of anti-Zionists and Jewish anti-Zionists in particular. I think that he understood by now that there is an element of aggression when it comes to politics and the debate that is basically a continuum throughout the entire spectrum of Jewish politics. So for me, for instance, when I look at Torah Jews, and I respect their opposition to Palestine, I think that their argument is pretty solid. They said this is not what our belief is all about, and so on and so on. And still, I see them burning flags. Now, I don't have any attachment to Israeli flag, believe me. But why do you have to go there? Why do you have to do this kind of a symbolic, violent act? Can you say, not in my religion? All right, and then you see an Israeli leftist who is doing something. I don't know. It's quite disgusting. I hope that your listeners can't be after dinner, but she's doing the same thing. She's pooping on flags, on national flags, many flags, including Arab flags. I find it disgusting, and I think that Jeremy Corbyn is probably aware of this level of aggression within that is symptomatic to these bodies, and he just tried to be as nice as he can, and I must admit that it works for him, as we can see, despite the media standing against him and the entire Jewish universe denouncing him, except three, I don't know, Jaber, Jewish Voice for Labor, or whatever you call them. He is not getting weaker. He's getting stronger and stronger. And,
I disagree.
We would have.
I disagree. I disagree that he isn't getting weaker. Look, first of all, it doesn't matter. To me.
So you think that he is getting weaker in terms of popularity?
I do. I have no doubt that he is, and you know better than what you just said there. You said that he's getting stronger. You know better. I've read Being in Time twice, and I recommend it as one of the most important books you'll read this year or any other year. Go to gilad.co.uk. About identity politics and how it speaks to where we're going. Yes, because what we're seeing people all over the country jumping on the bandwagon. We're seeing this, it's almost like that old water torture where somebody is strapped to a table and cold water is dripped onto his forehead. What we're seeing is, and I'm right across social media and the trending that we're seeing over the last few weeks, we're seeing that young folks, the folks that I suppose came out most strongly in favour of Corbyn when he won the leadership election the first time before he won it again, those people now are being slowly but surely convinced that he's an old racist, he's an old dad or an old granddad who holds or harbours resentment towards Jews or the state of Israel. And while you're saying on the one hand that he's playing a Jesus Christ type character by turning the other cheek, he's missing a massive opportunity while he has the spotlight on him now. Let me finish very quick. I'll be very quick.
Sorry.
And we've loads of time, and you'll have plenty of time to answer this. We're seeing a guy who will be forgotten like yesterday's underpants when he moves on from that job. Right now, he's got a spotlight on him, and the media cannot ignore what it is that he says. It's a perfect time for Corbyn to address his own party, maybe at the next Labour Party conference, which is only a few weeks away. And explain what Zionism is.
I couldn't agree more with you. You know, I started with a condemnation of his weak attitude. But I said maybe this is his tactics. Whether it works for him or not, we cannot judge. I wouldn't operate as he does. However, as you probably know, I am also touring this country. You know, on a daily basis, I meet a lot of people. I'm doing a lot of festivals this season. And I can tell you that I have never seen people who are as upset politically, and it is not just with the government, this smear campaign and smear campaign against the Labour and Corbyn. They know exactly who is behind it. And while it looked, when I published The Wandering Who, people say, Gilad, why are you writing about Jews? Who are they? We don't even know. What is it? 6-7 years later, this country is completely hijacked. The Labour Party, instead of dealing with really crucial issues, the BBC, instead of dealing with real crucial issues, Brexit, the weather, that I don't know what I'm not.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Well,
you have Brexit, you have everything else. Yeah.
Instead of dealing with the most troubling and concerning issues in this country, we are basically operating like a country under occupation. A chief rabbi sending a moronic letter that calls to prevent criticism or vet the type of criticism we are allowed to express against a state that is inherently unethical is getting more press than Brexit, regardless of what I think about Brexit. And this is something that everyone sees. And if anyone thinks that this is the way to fight anti-Semitism, I'm here to say that this is the way to make anti-Semitism into a real threat for the future of this society.
So there you go. So maybe that's the agenda all along, because I've believed for years in that politics is a futile endeavour. The House always wins. I think at the top of the pyramid, the financial banking elites of the world, the royal families of the world couldn't care less who sits in the seats of power across Europe. They couldn't care less. It matters not to them. And what I see going on here is just divide and conquer playing out in maybe new ways, in ways that it's never played out before. That's what I see.
Okay. I think that you are right. And there are few narratives that can be considered here. One, it is very convenient for the government that its opposition is dealing with this nonsense debate. It's a ideal situation. All right? Whether it is good on the long run for this government or not is another question. So it is very good for the banking and for the government and for the oligarchs in this country. But there is another narrative, and this is also quite interesting. I do not believe that for 1 minute that the editorials of the Jewish Chronicle see Corbyn as a Hitler figure. What do I mean? They call him an existential threat, or a threat for the future of Jews in Britain, or whatever. Yeah, I don't see any of it. How can anyone see in Corbyn? How can anyone see in Corbyn such a threat? It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. What we do see is that in the last few years, we see the rise of hawkish bodies within the British communities that are becoming more and more popular. These bodies are not necessarily accepted by the Jewish British establishment. They are probably threatened by them. I'm talking about campaign against anti-Semitism that is becoming popular because it managed to communicate with the belligerent elements within the Jewish society. And what we see really is other Jewish bodies trying to catch up and to tell the Jewish community, hey, don't go there, stay with us, we are as hawkish. Now, all those transitions within the Jewish society are not new. We see exactly the same thing happening in Israel. And we see exactly the same thing happened before the Holocaust in Germany. And they never work out. And this is why a lot of British Jews are in a state of panic. And here Gilad Atzmon comes into the debate, and I have very bad news to share with them.
Do you think, sorry Gilad, so you think that, so Jews then, I mean, at the very outset of this conversation, I said that traditionally, Jewish people whom I know would say to me that most of them would say, well, I never really encountered any harassment, Richie. Now, I'm talking about people who would go to the synagogue and would wear the kippah. I think I pronounced that properly, the kippah. And so it's obvious then you're Jewish if you're wearing the kippah. Yeah.
You pass.
I'm terrible, yeah. And I don't want to, I'm not winding anybody up by mispronouncing it, my apologies. So there you are. So they would say, look, never really get anything, Richie. Occasionally a child might say something. Occasionally some fool driving past might say nothing. Now, as I said, more recently, people whom I know that I find to be reliable, Jews who are not supportive in any way of the Israeli government or the crimes, the genocide against the Palestinian people, they're saying that they're seeing and hearing more. You're suggesting, and I'm not against this, you're suggesting that if you tell somebody often enough that they're in danger, that they're under threat, that lots of people are out to get them, what you're saying is basically they will begin to believe it. Is that what's happening?
No, this is not what I'm suggesting. I'm suggesting that the hawkish transition that we see now within the Jewish community is an attempt by slightly more moderate bodies to take power because they feel that they were left behind by some Israeli pressure groups that push for this anti-Semitism nonsense. But, addressing what you're saying, the statistics that is produced by all those bodies that are supposed to claim to measure the rise of anti-Semitism suggest that actually violent incidents are dropping. All right? Violent incidents against Jews, anti-Semitic incidents, are dropping.
I can endorse that.
All right? What the rise that we see is because they report on comments on Facebook and Twitter and social media. And I don't have any doubt that some people are not happy with Jews and with Israel and with Zionism. And to start with, people are entitled to their thoughts. And if any of it is an incitement of violence, treat it with as much force as you can.
Well, we have laws, don't we? We have very clear laws about incitement to violence, and I don't think we don't need to introduce any new laws. And I'm with you. I'd rather.
No. I didn't say. I definitely didn't say. I'm against, as I said all along, against this international definition of anti-Semitism. I think that British institutions that adopted it, and quite a few of them did, were moronic, to say the least, because they didn't understand what they were pushed in. They actually confirmed to the Brits that we have one law for the population in this country and another law for the Jews. By the way, it's not a legally binding document. It's not a law. It's not a law. This definition. It's not clear what it is. It's never been tested as a law. But it means that you can swear at the queen or the royal family. You can say the most horrible thing about the prime minister or about the government. But if you say something about the Jewish Chronicles, you may find yourself behind bars.
Well, he's an interesting character, Stephen Pollard, because I tweeted him several months ago when not several months ago, but a couple of months ago, when Alison Shablo was convicted. And I tweeted him to say that, surely a journalist should be against the conviction of people like Alison for making her satirical songs. And he agreed with me. He agreed. It's on the record. It's on Twitter. He agreed with me. And I also tweeted him to say, listen, you also should be against then the criminalization of somebody's opinion about any aspect of history. So if some person wants to believe that there was no Holocaust or whatever, let them be wrong. Let them be wrong, but you can't put people in prison for that. And Pollard agreed with it. He agreed. He said, I agree with that. I don't like these people, but I agree. We can't be putting people in prison for their thoughts, for what they say.
He's definitely an interesting character.
Isn't he?
Definitely an interesting character. He's an interesting character, but at the same time, he is the editor of a paper that campaign, not just reporting, really campaigning. When a campaign against me, when I had a literary event, I should say, in a festival. All right, and I think that his position is not entirely clear to me, but I've seen him many times defending freedom of speech. But my explanation of it is completely different, and if you allow me to say it, it's something that you heard before.
You went into it in being in time. I'm quite happy to hear this again, and I know you tackled this. I know you tackled this whole concept of opposition to Jewish power coming from the Jewish. Go ahead. It's very good. It's very good. Go ahead.
So since freedom of speech is now becoming a Jewish problem, because some people rightly say, listen, we see an attack on our elementary freedoms, and it comes from these Jewish pressure groups. They don't allow us to talk about Israel. They don't allow us to mention Zionism or to talk about the Holocaust. Since it has become a problem, the best way to tackle it is to make some Jews into the greatest defenders of freedom of speech. And now the debate about freedom of speech and issues to do with Holocaust denial is becoming an internal Jewish debate. Now, when you look at these tactics, I called it, and people can read about it in Being in Time, which I like you, very recommend highly. This is what I call the creation of Jewish satellite opposition. By now, the discourse about Palestine is an internal Jewish debate. The discourse about neoconservatism is an internal Jewish debate. When capitalism became a Jewish problem, Karl Marx was invented, and 2 seconds later, the debate between capitalists and socialists or Marxists became an internal Jewish debate. A lot of people within the right blame Jews for immigration. What do we do about that? It is quite problematic. We invent Melanie Phillips, who is writing Londonistan, and she becomes the biggest opponent of the biggest opponent of
migration,
of migration or Islamic migration. So this is a tactic, and I, by the way, argue that it's not necessarily conspiratorial, because if you are a Jew and you see what Israel is doing to Palestine, you may as well get upset. And he said, not in my name. And if you're a Jew and you understand that the neocon school is largely a bunch of Zionist intellectuals, Jewish Zionist intellectuals, you say, sorry, but I'm also a Jew and I don't like it. And if you're a Jew and you understand that the debate on history is now becoming an internal Jewish episode, you may as well stand up and say, you know what, I'm a Jew and I actually want people to talk about history. So I cannot say that Pollard is conspiring, but this dynamic is symptomatic of Jewish identity politics.
To know something, it's a concept I had never considered until I read your book, this concept of Jewish satellite opposition. And I have to say, it annoyed me reading it that it hadn't occurred to me before. Not that I'm particularly smart, I'm not, and I'm not fishing for compliments either, but it didn't occur to me, and I thought, Christ, and I read it again and I read it again, and I have some sympathy with it, but here comes the but. And the but is, people like Norm Finkelstein wouldn't agree with that at all. Finkelstein would say, well, conspiratorial or not, my opposition to the state of Israel, its crimes against humanity, is genuine, and my part in that debate surely is not hindering or impeding any genuine resolution of it or solution to it, because what you're saying with the creation of satellite Jewish descent is keeping it all in-house is in some way conducive to nothing ever happening about it. It's a brilliant argument, but Finkelstein might say, even Chomsky, and I can't stand Chomsky, I don't believe him at all, but they might say, well, hang on a second, how are you actually saying that we can't be part of the discourse with respect to an overall solution?
Not at all. And I am very happy that you brought up this example of Finkelstein, because I do see Finkelstein as a very unique voice within the solidarity movement, and a very unique scholar. Is an incredible scholar. I been in touch with him. We are not friends at all. I think that my love to him, admiration, is not mutual. He doesn't like me at all. But a few times I approached him with questions, and he answered the most possible scholarly, in the most scholarly manner within seconds. I think that he has a photographic memory.
Yeah.
And I've never accused Finkelstein of being a controlled opposition. I'm more troubled with Chomsky, but I would tend to agree with you that he is probably more delusional. By the way, I hardly agree with Finkelstein on anything. Yet I really appreciate his scholarship. Okay, when I think of controlled opposition, it is usually within the political and the activist realm. It is not really, or not necessarily within academia, though we see it a lot within academia. You can think of Richard Falk. He's probably the most interesting example. Now, I will give you a tool to deal with this question. Who is a Jewish-controlled opposition, and who is just a person who happens to be Jewish and ethically oriented? It is very simple. This is why I work on identity politics. I try to identify who are the people, what is it that the people who identify as Jews identify with. And I found out that there are three main categories. Some Jews identify as Jews because they believe in the Torah. They follow the Torah, I should say. They follow the Talmud. They are religious. This is an innocent category. Second category are people who identify as Jews because their parents are Jewish, because their mother is Jewish, because they have Jewish ancestry. This is also totally innocent.
Innocent, yeah.
Innocent. If your mother is Jewish, it doesn't make you into an Israeli war criminal. The third category are people who identify politically as Jews. And they are always guilty, whether they're Zionist or anti-Zionist. And why? Because they identify politically with a precept that is racially oriented. So you, Richie, cannot join JVP and to become the chairman.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Of this organization because you are not racially qualified. Okay? They are always racist, and in fact, in Israel, the third biggest party is an Arab party. When you look at JVP, the anti-Zionists, they don't have a single Arab or Goy or Gentile in their boards. They're Jews only. Okay, now, you look at Finkelstein. Norman Finkelstein is the classic second category. Yeah? He's Jewish by ancestry. His mother was... his parents were Holocaust survivors.
Yeah, Auschwitz, yeah.
But he doesn't identify politically as a Jew. He's very strict about it, if I understand it correctly. Richard Falk, is maybe... I don't think that he's religious. I don't think so, but, I cannot say, with certainty. And he identify as a Jew. If he identify at all as a Jew, I'm not so sure about it. It's by ancestry, but he definitely doesn't operate politically as a Jew, and this allows him to be a proper humanist. Now, the tragedy is that when you look at this world with 13, 15 million Jews. How many Richard Falk or Norman Finkelstein do we know? And I'll tell you the truth. I don't think that we can count even 5.
No, the vast majority, or all Jewish people that I know, either don't support Zionism or are indifferent because they fit into...
This is important.
Let me finish just before you jump back in. Let me finish.
Sorry, you're right.
Are either indifferent or ignorant, and ignorance is not a crime, or they fit into the first two categories that you described there brilliantly. I'm going to say this, and we're going to wrap it up now in about 3 minutes, but I'll give you the final word. I'm going to say this, right? Do you know that political Zionist that you described there? This is going to sound really weird and really bizarre. While I find such people to be reprehensible and to be devoid of any humanity, because to support what's going on in Gaza, the biggest concentration camp in the world, the most inhumane treatment on planet Earth today, those people are sick that support that and that defend it. But I'm going to say something. I admire those fuckers. Let me finish. I admire those fuckers because they're honest. Who I can't stand is their paid whores.
You have just to repeat the last sentence. Who you admire because for some reason I lost you.
Yeah, you described the political Zionist, the person who believes in it, the person who defends the treatment of Palestinians. I find those people reprehensible, sick, and devoid of all moral code. But I admire them because they put their balls out there and they say, well, listen, this is what I am. You can go and piss off. Who I really hate, who I really despise and despair of, are the whoremongers in the UK establishment and in the US establishment who take those political Zionist money to do their bidding, to muddy the waters and to create the status quo that we have today, because those people don't believe in anything. At least the Zionists, crazy as they are, crazy bastards though they are, at least they believe in something. They actually stand for something, which is terribly wrong and is a monstrosity in my opinion. But the fucking vacuous whores in British establishment who take money to pave the way for these people to get away with what they do, those are the people I reserve my hatred for. Not for Jews or not for Zionists, but for the fucking enablers. Sorry for swearing, go ahead. I'll give you the final couple of minutes.
But I think that if you start to learn about Jewish culture, you will see that they have a name. We are calling them Sabbath Goyim. It's a rabbinical notion. It refers initially to the Goyim, to the Gentiles who are taking care of the Jews on Sabbath, because the Jews cannot do a lot of things in Sabbath. They cannot, drive a car. They cannot turn the light. They cannot cook food, and so on and so on. This notion made it into a political idiom, and it refers to all those within British establishment, American establishment, Gentiles who are actually serving the whims of the Jewish lobby. Now, what you are saying here is that it is actually people who are using Jewish lobbies and Jewish Zionist bodies to serve their interests. And I am not in a position to determine what is the situation, and I'm not in a position to determine whether it the dog that wags the tail or the tail that wags the dog. But I can tell you that in the last 2 decades, we saw this country, the country that you and me are living in America and the West in general, fighting too many Zionist wars. It started with Iraq and Libya and Syria, and I have a feeling that we
might have just lost you there, Gilad.
By now, we are all Palestinians, because like the Palestinians, we cannot even utter the name of our oppressor. And if we had the will to do it, the international definition of anti-Semitism is there to try to stop you from doing it.
Listen, mate, I want to recommend again, that was so, I should have taken a break halfway through that, but so gripping was that I didn't do it. So I'm running behind time. If you haven't picked up Being in Time by Gilad Atzmon, where he fleshes out in great detail the themes that he's been discussing tonight, I highly recommend that you read it. It's a terrific book and it's eminently readable. It really is. You can find it online at all good. At all good online bookstores. You can also go to gilad.co.uk, where he blogs regularly about these issues, and you'll find details on his website as well of where he's going to be playing, because lost in all of this is the fact that the guy's a brilliant saxophonist, and as my missus,
I love you, man.
as my missus is a mean sax and clarinet player herself, she tells me that she's in awe of your skills. Thanks for that, brilliant stuff, Gilad, and you're welcome back anytime.
She will get a free lessons from me if she needs.
Lovely, mate. Thanks, and come back anytime, you know that.
Yes, thank you so much. I really enjoy your wit. You're incredible in what you're doing, man. Thank you so much.
Love the back and forth. Cheers, Gilad. Bye for now. Gilad.co.uk, Gilad Atzmon's website there. Glad we got him on the mobile there while we had the problems with the Skype. You know, when I was on Talk Radio Europe in my Spain days, Zionists like David Rubin would come on my programme and would argue with me. And I would get animated and they would get animated. In fact, David Rubin debated Gilad on a programme that I made for The People's Voice back in 2013. But we kind of had a falling out along the way. But there was a time when Zionists, political Zionists, men and women completely committed to the hegemony of the State of Israel, to the success of Israel at the expense of the indigenous people. There was a time when they had no problem coming on programs and debating people like me. Now, I wasn't trying to get a laugh when I said I, on some level, admired, maybe I shouldn't have said admire, but admired those people because they don't pretend to be that which they are not. They don't pretend not to be a supporter of a racist doctrine, a racist creed, a genocidal creed. And that's not Judaism, by the way, that's Zionism. And I have no problem with that because you know who these people are and where they stand. The problem I have, Gilad labelled them the Goyim, are those who take money, who accept advancement in their careers through the support of the agents of this racist dogma. Those whoremongers. I can understand Zionists. Whether I agree with them or not, I understand them. Like I said, I find it morally reprehensible, inhuman and disgusting that you could be a Zionist. Fair play to them. They don't try to hide from it. You don't hear a Zionist say, well, I'm not a racist, but what enables that? Well, we're witnessing it at the moment. It's the media in this country. Its failure to investigate those screaming for the head of Jeremy Corbyn and his allies in the Labour Party. The absence of any real questioning. The absence of a single journalist to say, well, hang on a second. Only last year, the largest survey ever in this country of attitudes towards Jewish folk was conducted and concluded that there ain't a problem. There isn't a problem. There are pockets of problems, of course. Jews who are easily identifiable because of their clothing. Maybe when they're going to the synagogue, as we discussed. Of course you'll get people saying stuff to them, as Muslims get in this country, as other people who are members of various communities get from time to time. But there is no evidence to support the contention that there is a serious, clear and present danger to Jewish men and women in this country or anywhere else. There isn't. But we don't have a media. How many fucking times have I said that on this programme in the last 4 years? How many times did I say it when I was on commercial radio? How many times have I written it? Adam Bolton today, Sky News, followed by a procession of presenters leading up to the great ginger ninja herself, Kay Burley, interviewing Jewish MPs and failing to push them on the question of where is the evidence of widespread attacks or widespread hostility towards Jewish folk. There is none. This is Hasbara, is what this is, on a scale that's never been seen before. And as it's ramping up now, you have to wonder, and I don't say this for kicks, maybe we're on the verge again of another incursion, another flyover Gaza, another Operation Protective Edge where thousands of people will be murdered, penned in to a place they can't escape from while bombs are rained down on them from the latest and greatest hardware and software made by Raytheon and British Aerospace. Maybe we're on the verge of another incursion, another attack on the civilians, the people of Gaza. And maybe this is a prelude to that. I have no idea. I've asked Jewish folks to come on. I've asked Zionists to come on. I've said, you know the programme. Don't pretend you don't. You know that it isn't my style to be roaring at people and shouting them down and not giving them the space to answer the questions, but still they won't come on. And you can draw your own conclusions as to why not. Quick break.
Have you lost access to important data from a computer hard drive, mobile phone, or other storage device? Maybe you have a broken hard drive containing years of information, or a smartphone that no longer works from which you'd like the pictures, movies, and chats recovered. If you would like to recover data from any type of digital device, including desktop and laptop computers, external hard drives, cameras, smartphones, NAS, and RAID servers, then contact Data Clinic today at dataclinic.co.uk now.
Introducing the H2O app, a powerful water structuring application that programs vibrational energies into water through the use of different sound frequencies. Once programmed, the use of water for drinking, cooking, bathing. Give it to your friends and colleagues or spread it around the garden. The list goes on. It's not just water that the app can be used for either. It's great for programming crystals too. The H2O app is free to download and is available on both Android and Apple platforms. For further information, go to h2oapp.online.
There's a place high in the mountains of Spain, a sanctuary where souls gather from all around the globe to learn about themselves and experience powerful changes in the way we see our world. They become awakened to their gifts and their power to heal others. Become part of this ever-growing worldwide family of unique, pure energy healing practitioners. Discover how amazing you truly are. Go to www.markbayerski.com. It could just change your life forever. Forever.
The Richie Allen Show relies on your support. Go to richieallen.co.uk and set up a monthly donation today.
Right, you're welcome back. So, a number of times over the years, I've been invited to speak at places, and I'm neither modest nor immodest. I try to be honest with respects to what I can do and what I can't do. I don't believe in false modesty. I don't believe in bragging about stuff. I'm pretty neutral when it comes to that. Neither modest nor immodest, probably the best way of putting it. But I always turned people down. I always said, well, look, there isn't anything I can do in terms of giving a talk other than talk about information that other people maybe have put in the public domain over the years. And I don't want to be doing something that's not original. And people were pretty happy with that, and they said fair enough. And it was nice to be considered. And at times there was a couple of quid, a few bob offered, which, you know, when you're making a program like this with very little, in fact, at the moment, zero advertising revenue coming in, genuinely, it was tempting. But I said, look, no. Now, however, it's been on my mind for several months. I've been accumulating and saving and grabbing and ripping various bits of video and audio from news agencies around the world, not just news agencies, but other things. And I've been doing some work in the last couple of years, as long-term or long-time listeners to the program will know. I've been doing a lot of work on how the 24-hour-a-day news channels have replaced soap operas in people's homes as entertainment and the implications of that. And I've talked about it at length. I've done whole shows on it and I've done monologues on it. But what I've done in the last few months is I've put together a very unique presentation. I wouldn't even dream of calling it groundbreaking. It might not be. It might be, it might not be. It's certainly original, and it would be for the people listening to it to determine whether it's any use or not at the end of it. So I've come up with an idea to do a 2.5 stroke 3-hour presentation, audio visual, in a theatre, looking at what I call media techniques in the latter 21st century, latter 20th century, early 21st century. And I like it. I like what I've been able to gather together. And I wanted to do something like a 2.5-hour audio-visual presentation where there would be a lot of video and interspersed with me talking about various ideas followed then by a Q&A with the assembled audience, if I was able to get an audience to come and watch something like that. And you don't know, you might not. I'm not joking, I'm not being modest, remember. There might not be a great deal of interest in it. Now, since I pushed it out there as an idea, there's been a little bit of interest. And I'm thinking, all right, so I'm going to try and arrange for a Sunday afternoon in November, maybe early November, in a theatre in the city centre, where it'll be easy to access it from the various train stations and bus stations, to begin around 1:30 to finish around 5:30, 6 p.m. on the Sunday evening, to give people a chance then to get back to wherever they might be coming from, presuming that some people might come from nearby cities or nearby towns or whatever. So I'm going to do it. Not my ideal thing. It's not my comfort zone at all. You know, speaking to large groups of people, it's completely alien and completely different to presenting television and presenting radio. But I'm going to do it, and I'm going to make sure that the ticket prices are, I mean, you're not going to be talking 25 quid, not even 20 quid. It's going to be affordable. You know, maybe 10, 12, maybe maximum 14, 15 as an absolute maximum, depending on the overall cost of the theatre. And it won't bring in a lot, but if it brought a few hundred quid in after expenses for the show, well, that would be a good thing, wouldn't it? In the absence of advertising revenue at the moment. And I did think of this before, but I never wanted to do it just for the sake of bringing in some money. I only ever wanted to do it if I had something to say that might be relevant to what's going on at the moment. I think there is something to say about the media that's original and new. I think I can do it. I've got the presentation pretty much nearly ready to go anyway. So I'm going to do it, and it's going to take a couple of weeks to tie up a venue and to tie up the date. But one venue has come back to me since I've been on air this evening to say, right, we'll have you. And this is terms and conditions, and I've got to get back to them now. But I'm thinking early November. It'll definitely be a Sunday afternoon, early Sunday afternoon. And I think it'll be very interesting. I think it'll be funny. I think it'll be kind of poignant, and it'll be nice to do it. And if it brought in, I think we've costed it out to make it affordable for everybody to come. I think after everything, expenses, it might bring in 400 or 500 quid for the radio show. That would be no bad thing. So leave it with me. It's a definite goer. And yeah, that's all I can say. I'm looking forward to putting it together and doing it. And whenever it's ready to go, and when we've got tickets ready to go, I'll obviously get it out there. It'll be a ticket company handling the ticket sales anyway, and we'll do it. Right, we'll do it. Right, now, in the meantime, following me in 5 minutes time on triggerwarning.tv and on the Cogent radio app, Hayden Hewitt and his mate and my mate Graham will be on air live doing their own inimitable and totally unique take on current events. That's Hayden Hewitt of Live Leak fame, and Graham Booth, of course, of Game Face fame, will be live on triggerwarning.tv and will be live on Cogent Radio in a couple of minutes' time. Two top men, check them out. Why not? That's your evening's listening decided for you. Tell you what we're going to do tomorrow, dear friends. We're going to speak to a man called Robert Cohen, and we're going to talk about genetically modified foods, genetically modified everything. This guy is sensational. He's never been on the Richie Allen show before, and he'll be one of the guests with me tomorrow, Wednesday at 7 p.m. As usual. Massive shout out to Gilad Atzmon. Love the man. Gilad.co.uk. Being in Time, that most recent book. Check it out. I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.